given the fact we have an organisational system where we have a division, given the fact we have a professional culture where there is adolescent and child health and those kind of things, how do we manage some of those complexities? So first off, put simply, and then you can switch off the rest of it, which is to focus on stage, not age. That's the core of developmentally appropriate healthcare. So thinking beyond chronological age to developmental stage. And as we've heard, one of the managers on site echoes this idea. It's about culture. It's not about a process. Transition is about the process. It's about movement between organisations. But actually, developmentally appropriate healthcare is about culture change. It's about a philosophy of approach across an organisation. So one of the things we did quite a few years ago was look at how is this term used in the literature. And there's a real diversity around that. Difference around the potential age groups, but actually the core issue is it's focusing around young people. It's about adolescent health. It's about how can we support that. And the work that came out of that actually is embedded in the NICE guidelines as one of the core issues around DAH, how we described it there. Since then, we've done lots of ethnographic work. So we focused on 3 specific organisations, a DGH, a paediatric tertiary and adult tertiary. Now, we chose 2 of those because they were promoting something like developmentally appropriate healthcare, really pushing forward adolescent care. So we did lots of observations, lots of following people around, going to different meetings, looking at different specialties and different areas within the organisations, and we interviewed some of those people. So what we found, even in these organisations that were kind of very pro this work, that there's kind of quite a range of diversity and values. There was a kind of narrative of some members that we worked with and saw that young people are just too small. They're very rarely ill, there's small numbers, those kind of things. And as we've seen at the start, Alan offers a different narrative of that. Secondly, that there was a lack of senior leadership, and when that leadership was in action, that was based in child health, not adult health. It was always within the child element of the organisation. And equally, that there was lots of pockets of good practice, and we're going to talk about that for the rest of the talk. But as soon as that person left, there was big questions about sustainability. That that knowledge wouldn't be distributed across the team or the organisation, it'd be embedded in that person. And then once they've gone, there's kind of practical problems. So, if we think about those people that were doing the pockets of good work, and we saw lots of those things, that were really good informal cultures. So there's kind of 5 elements that they really focus on. First off, they think about young people as a distinct group. They're not just small adults, they're not just big children, they're a group that we need to respect and think about as a distinct area. Equally, that focus was around not just the disease or the illness, but actually thinking about them in terms of the psychological issues, the social issues, those range of things, so that holistic version of care. And equally that adjustment of care, not around chronological age, but actually about how that person is at that point and what's going on within those developmental issues. Then there's a focus which we've seen before, which is that issue about supporting young people, helping them to kind of gain confidence, gain support throughout the kind of trajectory of their care. And finally, there's that integration. It's not just embedded in people, but actually trying to think about it in more an idea about teams and about organisations and between those kind of things. So, however, as I've kind of suggested, we had uneven distribution. We had what I would call, there was various wards in various organisations that had what I've referred to as teen whisperers. So you get a teenager on another ward, they wouldn't know how to manage them, this ward would get phoned up, my God, what's going on, how do we manage this? So there's very specific spaces and teams where adolescent care, something like that goes on. What's interesting is, it was one of the, if you had a specific space that was designated as an adolescent space, in times when organisational change was happening or people needed other rooms, they were often the first to go. They were the kind of most fluid spaces that were lost. Equally, and this is where kind of the experts, those local good practice, knew the other experts. If you've got a child with comorbidities, okay, I'm going to refer to so-and-so in a different department because I know they're great. Now that creates, so there are networks of trust. Now I can refer to that person. But then other people don't get that experience. Other people don't engage. So it reinforces a culture of we're going to focus within those people. We don't get a redistribution of that kind of work. So if we think about, there were informal and formal cultures of training around this. Informally, lots of people have built up their skill set in an ad hoc way, networking with people. All of these organisations had kind of often, well, meetings that were around kind of how can we work better for young people, might be adolescent meetings, those kind of things. But again and again, we got the usual suspects coming. And actually, not even if it wasn't the usual suspects, some meetings didn't know about other meetings that were going on. So there wasn't even a network around that. In one of the organisations, they had a kind of much more trust-wide idea. And they rolled this out. And again, it wasn't just focusing on the usual suspects. It was looking at the distribution across the organisation. So actually, a young person doesn't just get seen in a rheumatology department, but actually goes through A&E, goes to X-ray, to all those kind of places. And they would bring those people along to engage them. And that obviously needs buy-in from the managers and others to say this is going to go on. But that was kind of really key to a kind of change in culture around that. So, how do we facilitate it? And this is something we're thinking about, and as we've got a presentation later on, one of the seminars run by Jeremy is about practically how we thought about facilitating it. But at a basic level, we've got these conflicting values and worth. So actually, how do you change that kind of thing? Well, one of the core things we saw is when you've got that formal buy-in, when you've got that support, actually you can leverage change, you can leverage organisational issues. And equally, one of the core issues is focusing around a trust-wide strategy that focuses on organisational issues. So what do we do as a group? What's happening within teams, and what's those consultation factors? And as I said, that's exactly what we're going to talk about later on today, and you actually have within your packs something to take home and not to lose, which is about exactly those kind of things. How do we facilitate that change? Okay, thank you. Cheers.